Aw man, this land is so sad. Why are you so sad, land? Well, probably because it's Graw, and quite frankly, they're not doing all that well. Because if you'll remember, and it has been quite a while, Graw is ruled by King Jiol, who was kind of the guy who backstabbed Altia, murdered Marth's father, and is also responsible for the death of Frey. And quite frankly, the dude himself, and not altogether the best ruler. Marth had an entirely new facial portrait. It was pretty cool. So yeah, unfortunately, this is one of the points where Shadow Dragon really screws up with its writing. That last little line of Marth being able to fight King Jiol, that's pretty much the most weight any of this actually has. Like, spoilers, when we fight Jiol, Marth doesn't even have any unique dialogue for fighting him, which really kinda sucks. I mean, you could have done so much with this, and it's been a while since we've seen Jiol. Like, if it weren't for the prologue, we wouldn't even really know who he is. So, yeah, the fact that it doesn't do anything else really doesn't help. So, Jiol here, he's not even the toughest opponent. I mean, he is a general, and he does have a bow, so do be wary of that. But yeah, story-wise, there's basically no weight to this whatsoever. Jiol here is pretty much just gonna act like a coward, which, to be fair, that is understandable. I mean, he did defeat Altia via backstabbing, so he's probably not the toughest guy around, but he should be more of a major villain. Like, even if they didn't want to include, like, between-chapter cutscenes where you see Jiol doing stuff, which, by the way, they really should have done something like that. I do really wish they had shown off more of the villains, like, see what Medius is up to between chapters, maybe we could see a bit of Camus as well, see how he's doing. Shadow Dragon really could have done that where the original game couldn't because, well, it was an NES game, but they didn't bother. Wow, Jiol's disrespecting the Pegasus Knights. Oh yeah, McCallus. By the way, that's another villain who we really should see more of throughout the game, but he's a fairly late game villain, and we're not going to be seeing him for a while still. But he is fairly important, which again, I wish they had included cutscenes between chapters to show off more of the game, but no, that would require efforts. So yeah, Shadow Dragon definitely showing a bit of weakness here. That being said, this is an okay chapter. I dig it. There are a fair few of these ballistas. Of course, that guy right there, yeah, take care of him fairly easy. Actually, there aren't a fair few ballistas. In fact, I think that's one of the only ones. So, fairly easy formation to break. Just FYI, you're definitely going to want to bring a thief here, because if you don't have any way to lower that bridge, you're going to have to take a very long way around. You are going to have to send Marth this way because there's a village down this path, but yeah, that is a terrible choke point to go through for you, actually, because there are a lot of archers on that side, and they will fill you with arrows. In fact, that's why I'm sending my own archer down there, and honestly, things don't go too terribly well for Caster either, but I mean, if something went horribly wrong, again, as I've said before, you wouldn't see this, but yeah, it's not the easiest path to travel down, and if you have to send your entire army that way, that's really not a good thing, so, avoid that. If somehow you've let both of your thieves die, which, quite frankly, don't ever let that happen, I mean, if you're doing a, let everyone die run, which no one really does, even though that's kind of a gameplay mechanic of the series, yeah, you should be keeping at least one of each unit. Though then again, if you're doing so badly that you lose your thieves, you might be the type who actually needs those reserve units. Which, to be fair, are kind of... Actually, are there any thief reserve units? I didn't see any on my Gaiden playthrough, so I don't know if they give you thieves, actually. I'm not too familiar with the reserve stuff in general, because this is the only time I've really encountered it. It's also in the sequel, New Mystery of the Emblem, but I never actually saw reserve units in that game, because you don't actually have to kill anyone in that game to get to the Gaiden chapters. Good game design, how I miss you. Unfortunately, I'm not doing the best with Minerva here. I mean, not damage-wise. Like, she's not taking shit from anyone in that regard, but sadly, her lack of strength growths is kinda showing here. She's having a hard time taking down those knights, which is why you might actually want to consider giving her a hammer, because honestly, hammers on Minerva are pretty good. She is very excellent at taking out knights, just because she's got the whole distance things going. Most knights, well, all knights really, it's only generals that get alternate weapons, but yeah, knights have lances, so while Seda might be able to take care of them, and to be fair, she's not the best for that either, just because of her low strength as well, but Minerva actually has a weapon type advantage. And again, that actually allows her to use hammers instead of just plain old axes, though, to be fair, Hot Eclair would actually be a good thing to give her, just because that does a lot of damage as well and is also fairly quick, so good weapon. I just don't want to waste it because those things have limited durability. I really wish the 3 Regalia and, you know, just special weapons in general didn't have durability, because that kind of makes me less inclined to use them. I mean, in fairness, if you give the special weapon unlimited uses, it's kinda broken. Like in Fire Emblem Awakening, Chrom can equip swords that aren't the Falchion, but why would you ever do that? There's no reason to. I mean, if you class change him, then yeah, sure, he'll need other weapons just because he can be an archer, and obviously archers don't use swords. I mean, the, oh shoot, Bow Knights? I think they're called Bow Knights, I've actually forgotten, because they're called Horsemen in 7. Or are they? Darn it, I've forgotten. Actually, no, they're called Hunters, or they're called Horsemen in this game. Pretty sure they're the same in Fire Emblem 7 as well, but they're called Bow Knights in Awakening. I think that's the case. But yeah, that's why I was saying things don't go the best for Castor, just because if he hadn't dodged a few of those shots, he would have been dead right there, so let's heal him up, because otherwise things are going to go very, very badly, because I do still need Castor. He is very important. That being said, speaking of sort of archer-type stuff, you're gonna want to save up some aerospates for this chapter. They're gonna come in very useful. Also, that sniper right there, the reason you don't only want to send Minerva, because again, low attack power, so she probably can't kill him on her own, rather. So, yeah, if you really feel confident, then you can try, but I'd definitely send in some backup. She can take everything else out on her own just fine, but that archer will probably be trouble. And speaking of archery, you do want to be careful of the longbow user on the other side of this wall. As you can see, I was trying to place Seda there for a little bit before realizing, oh wait, he could probably kill me from there. Though he might be coming up on the point where Seda might be able to take a shot from a bow user. I mean, throughout the game, it's very unlikely you'll survive it if you get hit at all. Later on, though, you might have enough HP and maybe enough defense in order to tank a shot from a bow user with a Pegasus Knight. It's more likely, though, that you'll dodge instead. It might be the point at which Seda's actually has enough evasion to do that sort of thing. And, by the way, yeah, check this out. Did I ever mention that Lena is kind of, well, she destroys things really easily. Yeah, her magic stat is fantastic. It's kind of unrivaled even by mages, to be honest, so she works great as a healer, but when it comes to killing enemies, she's also good at that. I mean, she is frail, so don't send her into a really thick battle, but if you have a few straggler units, don't be afraid to send Lena out to just decimate them, because she will. Her magic stat is great, and thankfully, like our own units, most enemy units don't actually have any resistance. And by the way, yeah, don't fire at these guys just yet, because Paula and Katria are on our side. Oh, hey, look at that. Now, this is actually the first time we're seeing Camus in Shadow Dragon proper, but we have seen him before. Of course, I did play the other BS Fire Emblem chapters from New Mystery of the Emblem. They did count as prequel chapters, though, so we've seen him before. And we know, Camus, pretty good guy. We can tell that from here. But, unfortunately, he can't exactly do anything to help us, because he is part of Grust. And we get Thoron. Yep, Thoron's alright. It's a high-power magic, which, to be honest, I don't need. Going back to the whole everyone has low resistance thing, while I do like to keep, like, extra powerful magic on my person just in case of emergency, I rarely ever use them, just because they're not needed. And quite frankly, since I use Linde, if I need any sort of high-power magic, I just use Aura, because Aura's kind of, well, it destroys things. And, ooh, yeah, that low speed is kinda not really doing too well, and unfortunately, to be fair, it's not completely Board's fault, just because, yeah, no one's actually fast enough to outrun that sniper. That's a pretty damn fast sniper, I gotta say, which, to be fair, makes sense. Snipers are generally known for their speed, more so for skill, of course, but speed as well. Anyway, as I was saying, yeah, you don't want to fire at Paul and Katria because, as you might have already known, they are kind of our allies. Just because they're red units doesn't mean that they're going to attack us. And this is one of the points where I really wish green units were in Shadow Dragon, and it kind of sucks that they aren't. I don't know why they would take that mechanic out, because I'm pretty sure it was also in Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn. I mean, admittedly, Radiant Dawn was kind of a down point for the series in general. I'd say Shadow Dragon's probably the bottom of the barrel, and yes, I know I'm saying that even though I have said before that I like Shadow Dragon, but it is kind of the low point. I say that because it's not that Radiant Dawn is the worst game, but you might have noticed if you ever looked at the character sprites or their portraits in that game, they're kind of similar to Shadow Dragon in that they're less colorful than Path of Radiance is, and characters are less expressive, you know, in just their default pose. Oh yeah, by the way, made a huge mistake here. Whoops, should have kept Julian over here, but I kind of wanted to open that door sooner, and wow, past me, why did you fuck up this badly? That was a pretty big mistake, but yeah, Radiant Dawn, art-wise, definitely a bit of a downturn. Of course, again, Shadow Dragon's kind of the worst because its art style is very bland. I mean, like, the official art looks okay, but yeah, for the most part, these are just not very interesting portraits. Oh, you don't need to tell me about that part, I already heard it. this is new. Yeah, where'd S get off to? That probably isn't good at all. Well, after this turn is done, past me, feel free to take it away. First off, we have Katria, who I believe is the better of the two, though, to be honest, this is just a personal thing. She's supposed to kind of be the one that gets critical hits. Her skill growth rate is very high, and she starts with a Killer Lance. I almost never get critical hits with Katria, though. That being said, though, if you have better luck than I do, and you probably do, Katria is actually a fairly solid unit. Paula, on the other hand, I really don't think she's as good. She starts with the same speed as Katria, despite being a few levels higher, but her speed growth rate is abysmal for a Pegasus Knight, and her slightly higher strength growth rate really doesn't make much of a difference for me, so if you have to choose between the two, and given how many Pegasus Knights we have at this point, you probably will, I would go with Katria. Sorry, Paula, you might be the older sister, but you're not as good. That being said, though, that B rank in Lances does mean she could at least use Silver Lances, so her strength can be used for something. Alright, so yeah, I won't be using Paula and Katria just because I already used Seda and Minerva, so there's not that big a point in actually using them. There kind of is, but honestly, as much as I do like Pegasus Knights, it's not... I don't really want to fill my ranks with one type of unit all the time. You know, I want to have some variety, and having 3+ Pegasus Knights, not really my best idea of a good team, to be honest. That being said, there are advantages to using them. They're decent units, of course, but at the same time, I believe Paula mentioned that if Est returned, they could serve us better. Well, that's because they actually have a little something called the Triangle Attack. This is a reoccurring attack in the series, which I never really show off because it requires... Really, you missed with an Aerospate? Come on, man. Because it requires, again, you to have 3 Pegasus Knight units. And since that is so many Pegasus Knights, I generally don't like including him, because even if you do get a Triangle Attack, then it's not a huge advantage, I think. And of course, just having 3 Pegasus Knights means you're not going to have the best time when it comes to stuff like bow users or ballistae, so you do have to be way more wary about that. Now, basically how the Triangle Attack works is, you get 2 of the 3 Pegasus Knights positioned around the enemy, you bring the 3rd one in, and this can be any of the Pegasus Knights, it doesn't have to be specifically Paula, Katria, or Est, and by doing that, you basically just get an automatic critical, because they will all attack at the same time, and it'll do a lot of damage. But of course, that's only for one enemy, which maybe it'll be useful against bosses, but for the most part, it's really not that helpful, I think. Just because, again, you're using up 3 units' turns in order to get a critical attack on 1 unit. I don't see a huge amount of worth for that. If you want to use it, though, I'm sure it does have its uses overall. So, if you really want to bring all 3 Pegasus Knights, then it can be useful. And by the way, it's only between those 3. Minerva and Seda cannot participate in a triangle attack. Est, however, actually has my favorite line of dialogue for that sort of thing, because they do all get different lines for their triangle attacks. By the way, this is why I wanted to bring the ballistae with plenty of aerospates, because we have 8 turns of Pegasus Knight reinforcements, because apparently Paula and Katria just absconded alone, and the rest of the White Wings were like, actually, we still work for dollars, so we're gonna be fighting you. Which kinda sucks, but what are you gonna do? Now, I forget what Jake starts with, but I don't think you can have 2 sets of aerospates. If you could, that would be incredibly useful just because you could have 2 ballistae going at these units. But I don't think you can get that many aerospates at this point. Though maybe if you traded back and forth between them, you could kill both sets of Pegasus Knights at the same time, or both Pegasus Knights in a set. That's how you use the word set, but anyway, yeah. We're actually wrapping up the chapter at this point. We've just got this throne room to charge. I mean, those Pegasus Knights are going to be reinforcing it up pretty much for the rest of the map, which kind of sucks because they're just constant, and Katra's not really doing that well getting criticals. It kind of sucks. I mean, she got one there at least, thankfully, but yeah. Paul also has the Dragon Pike, which I wouldn't suggest wasting because it can be useful, but there are no dragons in this chapter, so it's nigh on useless other than, okay, it has decent strength. And thank you, Ogma, for taking those hits. Ogma's not really having the best of luck with strength growths, is he? I mean, usually he can take knights on no problem. Though maybe I'm thinking more New Mystery of the Emblem than this game. Because in fairness, New Mystery of the Emblem really improves a lot of the, Oh yeah, I forgot I really screwed up here. Thankfully, though, I actually figured out, that I could use Psychic, or Physic, rather. That's not Psychic at all. But yeah, thankfully I remembered that I had the Physics staff, so I didn't completely botch it. But yeah, where was I going at again? Forget what I was talking about. Well, there goes that. Oh right, stat growths are better in New Mystery of the Emblem. Julian's actually a really good example in that he's one of the best units in the game. Like, even defense-wise, he outclasses a lot of units, including other knights. So yeah, stat growths in that game, a lot better. Well, I guess now that that's been said, we're pretty much done here. Just a few more chests to unlock. Silver card, that gets you half off on items when you purchase them at a shop. But yeah, we're pretty much done here. We just gotta finish off King Jiol. Oh yeah, by the way, very minor story detail. Katria there actually has a crush on Marth. You can kind of tell from a few of her lines here and there, but for the most part, it's not really mentioned and never comes to fruition, which that should be obvious why. I mean, there's a different Pegasus Knight that, it's kind of obvious that, Marth and her kinda gonna be in a relationship. If you've seen any Fire Emblem media involving Marth outside of this, it usually spoils who he ends up marrying later, but that goes quite unrequited, and by the way, that plot point's kind of repeated in Awakening, just because you have Chrom and Cordelia. But Cordelia can't actually marry Chrom, for some reason. So yeah, just FYI, as I said earlier, Marth won't actually have any special dialogue if he goes up against Jiol. Though another thing I dislike about Shadow Dragon is that, actually both this and New Mystery of the Emblem, bosses will only say one thing to you, so if they have multiple lines of special dialogue, they'll only go through the one for whoever fights them first, which really sucks. Oh well, yeah, that's King Jiol dead, by the way. He didn't even hit Marth. He hit Seda, which was actually kind of surprising, considering she usually dodges pretty well, but yeah, that's it. Jiol's dead. Marth's father is mostly avenged. I mean, we still gotta defeat Dolor, but, other than that, we're pretty good here. It's just over. Yeah, that's a little anticlimactic, but I guess we are done here, so gonna give a little extra experience to Maria, because she kinda needs it still. She is still at level 5, but at least she levels up fairly quickly. And we get a bullion. I guess a little extra money's nice, so yeah, I guess we'll go and heal Ogma as well, even though, quite frankly, Lena does not need the experience. She's pretty fast, and her magic destroys everything, which is the most important lesson to learn here. Oh yeah, and how could I forget to mention, we also avenged Frey as well. Because remember, he was killed on Jiol's word, so let's take a moment to remember our fallen friend, who isn't fallen in an alternate dimension where he's actually one of the most kick-ass cavaliers in the game. Oh yeah, Falchion. I mean, it would have been nice, but to be honest, I can understand why they wouldn't want to keep Falchion with Jiol, because he's kind of a wimp. So, I'm sure that somebody took Falchion from him while he wasn't looking. I mean, it probably wasn't that difficult. Ooh, yeah. We're gonna have to go find Garnif. We are getting close to Altia, but we really need Falchion back in our hands, so we're gonna have to make a little detour.